Welcome to our PwC Business Success podcast. Today we're going to talk about cost of quality, and with me is Pieter Theron. He's a partner at PwC and the Industrial Manufacturing and Digital Operations Lead. Welcome, Pieter.
Thank you, Frances. It's an exciting opportunity to be here and have a detailed discussion.
In today's market, we're dealing with a lot. There's 2 wars going on. There's a logistics crisis. We're still dealing with some post-COVID or post-pandemic issues. So a lot of companies go towards lean manufacturing, cutting costs at all costs, but sometimes forget about cost of quality. What would you say cost of quality is?
I mean, there's a definition of what it is, if that's what you're looking for. But just very briefly, if you think about percentage of cost of sales for quality, depending what industry you're looking at, is between 10 and 30% of your cost of sales ultimately goes into quality assurance of your product, or ultimately the cost of fixing bad quality of your products.
So to that point, there's 4 categories of cost of quality, am I correct?
Yeah, there's obviously you've got a design in quality to start off with, but then initially it's about picking up quality in your production process. I think that's definitely one. I think we always talk about the last one, but maybe you can add some in the middle as well.
Yeah, I think it goes about appraisal cost, preventative cost, and then, of course, your internal and external failure cost. Why is it so important?
For me, it's important because if you pick up a external failure, the cost associated to that is 10 times as much as picking it up very early. You've mentioned appraisal. By designing in a quality process, you pick it up very early so you can eliminate that defect before it hits the market. Mm-hmm. So the cost of bad quality in the market is up to 10 times that of picking up very early.
And of course, once you get to the internal and external failure cost, external being the worst, you're dealing with, there's other costs associated with, like reputational damage and warranties and so on. What strategies can they follow to prevent internal and external failure, or even to just have good appraisal systems?
I think that's really the starting point. You have to have a total quality management system built into your manufacturing process. For me, that starts with right when you start doing R&D, your design processes. Obviously, you build a factory, then you start running the factory. I think that's the appraisal cost that you're talking about, how to actually pick up defects very early in the process. You don't want to end up in a product recall like we've had many instances over the last number of years in FMCG, in automotive, and so forth. So the trick is to have a system that will identify any issues that you may have in raw materials or your process or in your intermediate products before it gets out to customers. So for me, that's a starting point.
So what would the first step be?
Well, the first step for me is to design a proper quality management process in your company.
Of course, there's many theoretical processes that can be followed. Total quality management, meaning that every single person in the company should know what their role is in quality management. And then you are quite a expert in Six Sigma and lean manufacturing, so there's those systems that one can use.
Exactly. I think every company has to come up with a customized approach because not everybody does things the same way or do the same products. And therefore, you got to think about what is the earliest I can pick up a defect. If you think about building a building, you don't want to pick up a defect once the building has fallen to the ground, killing many people. You actually want to pick it up in the design process. So for every company, your process will look differently, and you have to design quality in every single step as you progress through your value chain.
Yeah, and I always say quality is a little bit like religion. You can't put in rules. It's got to be a heart change. Yeah. It's got to be a total culture permeating the entire organization.
Exactly. It has to be a mindset of the people. If everybody doesn't have the quality mindset, you just need one person. So to not have that mindset, and you'll have the same negative outcomes. So the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So the earlier you can pick up things, the more mindset you have with the people, the better your chances are not to have that cost of quality in the end.
So it's better to rather invest upfront in a proper quality management system and invest in preventative measures. But talking about measures, what you can't measure, you can't improve. So that rolls into continuous improvement then.
Yeah, I suppose that's the starting point, measure. So measure every point in the process and then design processes to say, how can we eliminate this? What is the root cause of this? Often companies just collect the data. We've often seen that for example, in downtime analysis systems, even quality control systems, people don't log the right codes for defects. And if you don't capture the data correctly, you can't analyze it correctly, you can't design the right preventive or mitigation measures. So the starting point is measure correctly and then design the process around that to eliminate that defect.
That's so insightful. As you go along, and often people cut on quality control to cut costs, and that's when engines fall off the aeroplane and those type of disasters happen. But preventative maintenance also plays into this.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about preventive maintenance. I think lots of people has got many fancy words for us, but we often found that even on a maintenance side, the basics are not there. So we want to jump to employ AI to give us predictive maintenance. We want to use all kinds of technologies to get us there, but often the basics are not there. It goes back to this measurement and designing of the system correctly. That's really the starting point. I mean, obviously, preventive maintenance is to avoid a breakdown in your factory, and there's definitely things that you have to go do. But not everything leans itself to preventive maintenance. There are certain times when it's better to run a piece of equipment to failure rather than to deploy any preventive maintenance, because it's just impossible to go do that. So once again, it talks to the customization of a quality process to your specific manufacturing operations.
And often when it's continuous manufacturing, like a liquid, they would run to breakdown.
It's even more difficult there. So those companies normally have annual shutdowns, but that's once again, you use your historical data to figure out when is the best time to, for example, do a shutdown to prevent a failure in my equipment, for example.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about knowing your customer requirements and doing everything in the business at a high quality standard and a standardized standard, if we can coin a new phrase, so that every product that goes out will stay out, will create customer satisfaction and won't return with warranty costs and all the other costs, reputational damage associated with it.
Exactly. As I mentioned before, research have shown that the cost of a failure in the client's hand is 10 times that of picking up earlier in the process. So it just makes sense to start as early as possible in the process to build in quality in what you do.
So don't cut your cost of your quality prevention costs, and don't cut your marketing costs. Rather make sure that every single product complies with your customer requirements and build your turnover rather than just focusing on cutting costs. Pieter, thank you so much. It was really insightful and good to learn from you. I think there's a lot we can still learn from you, so we might do some follow-up sessions to come. Thank you very much for watching, and watch out for our next podcast, which is on sustainable business growth. Thank you.
Thank you.